Sharks. Did you know that the airline industry is actually the most harmful method of transportation in the world? Today, we are looking for you to invest in our new nonprofit organization, Earth and Air. Earth and Air's mission is to better our world through collaborations in the sky. Now, you may be wondering, what exactly does this mean? Essentially, planes emit CO2 into the atmosphere each time they're flown. However, we plan to combat this issue through reforestation. Essentially, in order to fix the climate crisis, we must first recognize the harmful effects caused by the airline industry, as well as how that intersects with the issue of deforestation, which is why we came up with a new and innovative solution, Earth and Air. Before Caitlin discusses more about the airline industry, let me first explain how we plan to incentivize our five key stakeholders: airline companies, airline passengers, governmental officials, employees working for our nonprofit, as well as environmental activists and lobbyists. Essentially, our organization would create partnerships between both airline companies and customers in creating a cheaper alternative to the green tax. The green tax is an incentive for large companies to decrease their environmental footprint. Essentially, if companies find innovative ways to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, then they receive tax reductions. Through partnering with Earth and Air, airline companies around the world could not only receive carbon coupons and lower taxes, but will also directly help in our reforestation efforts, as well as gain a more eco friendly image. Not only will this help these businesses, but it will also make customers more inclined to travel with these airlines rather than ones that aren't helping the environment.
Airlines have had a huge impact on the current state of our environment and specifically climate change. Planes emit carbon dioxide, which is a product of combustion of hydrocarbon fuels like gasoline and jet fuels, and this accounts for 70% of plane emissions. This is extremely harmful for the environment because CO2 emissions result in the greenhouse gas effect, resulting in global warming. They also emit nitrous oxide and sulfur oxides. So it's pretty clear that something needs to change within the airline industry in order to protect the Earth. So the question is, how can we help combat climate change by making changes in the airline industry? There have been some movement for change, for example, the Carbon Offsetting and Reduction Scheme for International Aviation, which is a program that allows airlines to purchase emissions reductions offsets. However, in order to see change from this initiative, it will take 3 or more years to begin its first phase of the project. And in order to make a distinct difference, we need to find a plan that can work starting now because this environment simply doesn't have time to wait. So plainly put, what is occurring right now is not effective as evident with the current state of our climate. We are proposing a way for airlines to offset their emissions immediately by benefiting both the airline and the environment, which is ultimately a more appealing and effective option than what currently exists now.
Hi, Shark. So it's important to know some background information on the airline industry and their overall impact on the environment and climate change. So aviation is responsible for 2% of all global carbon emissions, and this number is only increasing. By 2037, about 9 billion passengers will board commercial flights, doubling the current passengers boarding commercial flights a year. Flights produce greenhouse gases, which are mainly carbon dioxide, CO2, from burning fuel. These contribute to global warming as they're released into the atmosphere. And according to this International Civil Aviation Organization, an economy first-class flight from London to New York emits about 0.6 tons of CO2 per passenger. So one tree offsets about 31 pounds of CO2. This means that it would take about 43 trees to offset a flight from London to New York. Many airlines hide their problematic carbon emissions through greenwashing campaigns where they do things such as plant trees and use compostable cups and recyclable napkins on the flight. So they paint these efforts as being greener and more carbon neutral. However, the problem with these efforts is that they can give passengers a false sense of security that they are not contributing to harmful emissions. Earth scientist, author, and founder of No Fly Climate Sci, Peter Kalmus, believes that these efforts are almost worse than doing nothing because they create a myth that you can offset the problematic parts of flying. So we must instead examine how and in what ways we can push the airline industry to improve the state of our planet in a fundamentally helpful and beneficial way.
Forests cover approximately 30% of the land area on Earth. They help people survive by basic things such as purifying water and air, and they help others thrive by providing people with jobs. Worldwide, forests provide 13.4 million people with jobs in the forest sector, and another 41 million people have jobs related to forests. They are home to 80% of terrestrial biodiversity, containing trees, plants, animals, and microbes, according to an international financial institution, the World Bank. Forests also play a critical role in mitigating climate change because they act as a carbon sink, soaking up carbon dioxide that would otherwise be free in the atmosphere and contribute to ongoing changes in climate patterns. But forests around the world are under threat, meaning all of these benefits are jeopardized. The threats manifest themselves in the form of deforestation and forest degradation. The main cause of deforestation is agriculture. The main cause of forest degradation is illegal logging. Deforestation is a particular concern in tropical rainforests because they are home to much of the world's biodiversity. In the Amazon alone, around 17% of the forest has been lost in the last 50 years, mostly due to forest conversion for cattle ranching. Forests are more than just a collection of trees and other plants. They are integrated ecosystems and home to some of the most diverse life on Earth. They are also major players in the carbon and water cycles that make life possible. When forests are lost, their destruction sets off a series of changes that affect life both locally and around the world. Forests are carbon sinks and therefore help to mitigate the emission of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. Tropical forests alone hold more than 228 to 247 gigatons of carbon, which is more than 7 times of what is emitted each year by humans. But when forests are destroyed, they emit carbon instead of absorbing it. In fact, deforestation accounts for nearly 20% of greenhouse gas emissions, second to only the burning of fossil fuels. As climate change continues, trees play an important role in sequestering carbon. Tropical trees alone are estimated to provide about 23% of the climate mitigation that's needed to offset climate change, which eventually can help repair our ecosystem.
It's abundantly clear that deforestation is a threat that has the potential to accelerate climate change and ultimately destroy our Earth. So, the direct solution to this problem is reforestation. We've explained how the implementation of reforestation into our business model in relation to the airline industry could have a hugely positive impact. But with that said, it's very important to understand why reforestation would be such an effective method, as well as certain details about the process that must be considered. Firstly, statistical studies have already proven reforestation's effectiveness in fighting climate change. Studies have proven that reforestation since 2000 is on pace to remove 103 billion tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere between 2020 and 2050. Additionally, the carbon removal compounds as forests mature, making it a wise monetary investment over time. Secondly, in terms of an NET or negative emissions technology, reforestation simply makes the most sense. Many NETs are either significantly more costly or not yet technologically available, or not yet proven effective, and reforestation eliminates all of these questions. Now, in terms of location, there are many options. Given that our organization will obviously be based in the US and work in partnership with our government, it would likely be the most logical to initiate reforestation processes within the country. Or we could at least start here with the potential to later expand to other places, such as the Amazon, for example, that are in dire need of reforestation. As our initiative expands and gains traction, this would make sense. So, in the US, our national forests should be the main areas of focus. It has been proven that when our natural forests are revived, they act as the most effective carbon sinks in comparison to randomly produced tree farms. It is also vital that we consider the diversity in the types of trees that are planted and work to emulate the natural forestation patterns that have been present in each location. This maximizes effectiveness of carbon sequestration, promotes biodiversity, and ultimately enhances the overall sustainability of the areas that we reforest. Sharks, I hope we've captured your attention and been able to educate you on the effects of deforestation and the potential that reforestation has to save our planet. Because of the massively detrimental amount of CO2 released into our atmosphere by the airline industry, it is essential that they take action to start to reverse their damage. We feel that Earth and Air would be able to incentivize these airline businesses to get on board, help sequester the CO2 released into the atmosphere, and rebuild our forests. The climate crisis is something that can simply not be ignored any longer, and Earth and Air would provide the means to take a powerful first step to solving it. Thank you for your time.